Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Town of Vesuvius regular open meeting of council, March the 11th, 2025 at 2 p.m. in council chambers. So first off, we will have the approval of the agenda and there are no late items? No. Thank you. Could we have, thank you, Councillor Chong, Councillor Bennett, all in favor? Thank you. And the adoption of some minutes, the regular open minutes from March the 11th, 2025. Could we have a motion? Thank you. Councillor King, Councillor Poderica, all in favor. Thank you. All right, first up is correspondence, and that would be the Okanagan Basin Water Board. So at the last meeting, which was on March the 4th, we had a lot of talk about providing broad support for the invasive mussel program, and we've had lots of people send letters to Minister Neal, and the Okanagan Basin Water Board continues to work on this very important issue. We've had concern about the Okanagan's low snowpack. As you know, that when the snow is up in the hills, we expect it to, best scenario, melt slowly, and that doesn't always happen. And a couple of years ago, it melted really quickly because the weather got very warm. So it is a concern, and I'll speak more about that later. There were 20 grant applications for the Water Conservation and Quality Improvement Grant Program. And council, the board of directors will be awarding those projects on April the 2nd. And the board has taken quite a stand against aquatic pesticides and herbicides. And we know that there are a lot of those used down in on the American side of Lake Vesuvius, but it's been a stance that Okanagan Basin Water Board has had along with ONA and people in Canada that we have a motion that we are totally against the application of chemical pesticides and herbicides in Okanagan waters. So that was passed by the board, and it will be sent on. So, and the other thing I will mention is that we have a new COO, Chief Operating Officer, for the board. That was the Deputy Administrator position, and it's now a COO, and that would be James Litley. So we're very happy that he has that position. So could I have a motion, please, to accept this for information? Thank you. Councillor Chong, Councillor Bennett, all in favor. Thank you. And staff reports. This would be the Resort Municipality Initiative Grant Program, and that would be Mr. Davis.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Before you are a number of recommendations from the Grant Evaluation Committee. We met again and for the second round. So 9 organizations applied during this time. The amount available was $24,500, and the Grant Evaluation Committee was on the 20th of February. And during this time, we wanted to make sure that the committee members wanted to make sure that they got a fair take for all groups. One of the criteria that's based on the actual policy for the Grant Evaluation Committee, I wanted to highlight this because this is, if you don't actually get through this, you want to actually get your grant evaluated. So in order to move forward, you have to have the grant in on time. The organization has to be a not-for-profit entity. Is the event within the town of Vesuvius? Well, obviously, if it's not within the town, wouldn't be supported as such. And if it's applicable, have they applied and put in for a report from the previous year? And the financial request, would it be, applicable to each grant? So the groups that did apply, the Vesuvius Festival, applied for another $8,000. In the previous year, they got $7,500. They also got funding in the first round. The recommendation was $4,500 from the group to try to keep this as even as possible. The Desert Sun Counseling for the community kitchen, they applied under a different grant, and it really wasn't applicable because this funding is not or does not meet the criteria for that. Music in the Park, because they had a shortfall in the first round, they applied for another $6,000, and the recommendation was $2,000. The Soyuz Child Care Center, a fundraising event, they didn't get any funding in the previous year. Their request was for $5,000, and their recommendation was for $5,000. Lake Soyuz Sailing Club, the Sail into Summer event. Again, they didn't have any funding in the previous year. They are looking at a little over $2,000 to help with this event, and the recommendation was for $2,000. The Osoyoos Elks Lodge for the afternoon coffee house events. Again, no funding from last year. The request was $12,000, and the recommendation was $3,500. The South Okanagan Chamber of Commerce, it would be for the Oyster Festival. They've asked for another $2,867. They got $5,000 the previous year, but they also had some funding in the first round as well, and the recommendation was $1,500. The High Sac events, the amount on this was $300,000, and it completely, really not applicable for this in terms of how it could be funded at all. So that wasn't or did not pass any of the criteria. The Osoyoos Lake Paddling Club, the 6th Annual Dragon Boat Race Festival, they got $5,000 last year. The request this year was for $6,000, and the recommendation is for $6,000. So there are a number of recommendations from the committee, as you see, and I will leave it up to council to go through those.
Thank you very much, Mr. Davis. I will need to go through each one individually. So could we start with number 1, that council approves the Osoyoos Festival Society request for $4,500 for Gyro Park entertainment and traffic control from the Resort Municipality Initiative grant program. Thank you. Moved and seconded. All in favor. Thank you. I'm just going to point out one thing there because I noticed that on this application that they were looking at some added funding for traffic control. And I just want to point out, because I happen to be on the Festival Society, that the Central Okanagan traffic control that is required to be whenever there's a parade, and that is provided. We do not get a license from MODI unless we have that. And for Christmas, the cost for that parade was $1,561. So it's a lot of money. We used to do it with volunteers years ago, and that is not allowed anymore. So I'm assuming that the July 1st parade would be almost the same amount, or perhaps
yes, Madam
more.
Mayor, I did
you check
confirm
on
that?
that?
Yes.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very much. So I noticed that in there. Okay, next one, number 2, that council approves the Music in the Park request for $2,000 for the Music in the Park concert series from the Resort Municipality Grant Program. Councillor Chong, Councillor Bennett, all in favor? Thank you. Number 3, that council approves the Osoyoos Child Care Center request for $5,000 for a funding event from the Resort Municipality Initiative Grant Program. Councillor Chong, Councillor Bennett, all in favor. Thank you. 4, that council approves the Osoyoos Lake Sailing Club request for $2,000 for the Sail into Summer event from the RMI Grant Program. Thank you, Councillor King, Councillor Poderica, all in favor. That council, number 5, that council approves the Osoyoos Elks Lodge number 436 request for $3,500 for the afternoon coffee house events from the Resort Municipality Funding Program. Thank you, Councillor Chong, Councillor King, all in favor. That the council approves the South Okanagan Chamber of Commerce request for $1,500 for the Osoyoos Oyster Festival from the Resort Municipality Grant Program. Thank you, Councillor King, Councillor Bennett, all in favor. And number 7, that council approves the Osoyoos Lake Paddling Club request for $6,000 for the 6th annual Dragon Boat Race Festival from the RMI grant. Thank you, Councillor Poderica, Councillor Chong. All in favor. Thank you very much. And thank you, Mr. Davis. And next is we will need to have Ms. Duong and Mr. Garish come up to the table, please, because the next one is the subdivision application, S21-03 Parkland Dedication Proposal at 10105 74th Avenue. Thank you. Go ahead, Ms. Duong.
Thank you. So just a quick overview of the site. The subject property that we're looking at today is located at 10105 74th Avenue. So that's part of the Southeast Meadowlark area. The OCP designation that applies to the property is low density residential with a zoning of small scale multi-unit residential, so RS1. The parcel is approximately 8,775 square meters in size. The property is located within the growth containment area as delineated under the OCP bylaw. And as previously mentioned, this isn't an area that is currently within the ALR. However, the Agricultural Land Commission has conditionally approved the exclusion of these lands subject to the completion of a number of various conditions. So that is currently underway in an attempt to get the property out of the ALR. So contingent on being able to exclude the property from the Agricultural Land Reserve, the applicant's proposal is to undertake a 19-lot subdivision at this site for the purpose of undertaking a residential development. So about parkland dedication, the Local Government Act sets out requirements which are triggered at subdivision stage for the acquisition of parkland. So the Act stipulates that an owner of land, when that land is being subdivided, at the owner's option, must either provide without compensation parkland, and that would be in an amount and a location that's acceptable to the local government, or alternatively pay a payment in lieu to that municipality or regional district that equals the market value of the land that might be required for parks purposes. So the Local Government Act also stipulates that the amount of land or the amount to be paid must not exceed 5% of the land that's being proposed for subdivision. So despite that section, the LGA does set out the ability for a local government, which has an official community plan in place that contains policies as well as designations that respect the location and type of future parks. It gives the local government the ability to determine whether to take park land or payment. So in this case, the official community plan 1375 does set out a section that speaks to policies for parkland acquisition. And specifically, the OCP sets out priority areas for the acquisition and dedication of parklands being in areas that are designated or previously were designated medium to high density residential on the in the OCP bylaw and on the east side of Osoyoos Lake. Additionally, another priority location would be parkland along the waterfront. So as mentioned, because we do meet that criteria under the Local Government Act, the town does have the option to choose whether to take land or payment in this case, which is why we're here today. And I did want to highlight, so as I mentioned before, when discussing the site context, this property is designated as low density residential under the OCP bylaw. So it's actually not seen to be within one of these priority locations that's set out under the bylaw for parkland acquisition. So with respect to development cost charges, the Local Government Act does set out the authority for local governments to collect and impose development cost charges. So development cost charges can have multiple components. Typically, you see them with having these water, sewer, storm drainage components, but they can also include charges for the provision and improvement of park lands. So acquisition and then funds to fund various amenities for parks. So the town does have its own DCC bylaw, which does impose a parkland DCC component. In this case, for properties which were within medium density residential zones. And again, this was in relation to what the property was previously before the OCP changes had taken place just last year. There's a parkland component of $2,656, and that would be per lot. So just a bit about this particular property and its application history. The property owner did submit a subdivision application to the town back in July 2021. And then in that fall, there were OCP and zoning amendments that were approved by council in order to allow for the residential subdivision to take place. So after that was approved, a preliminary layout review was issued in February 2022, which had a 12-month validity period, and a couple of extensions had been requested since then. So the preliminary layout review outlined a number of different conditions that had to be met in order to obtain final subdivision approval. And in the case of this particular request today, this did include the payment of development cost charges that applied to the subdivision, as well as parkland dedication requirements. So back in on April 10th in 2024, a DCC payment was received by the property owner in relation to the subdivision, and that DCC payment included a parkland DCC component of $53,120. And on March 6, 2024, full narrative appraisal was also submitted as part of meeting the PLR requirements, and that had determined a fair market value of $2,850,000 as being the market value of the property. So 5% of that would equate to $142,500. So with respect to this particular, sorry, it looks like some of my slides just aren't coming through properly. With respect to this particular request, really the purpose of having parkland requirements at subdivision is they're there to ensure that the community's parkland needs are being met as your community grows. So really the decision of whether council is to require land or payment is typically informed by what's set out in the parkland acquisitions of your OCP bylaw. And really the main questions are, is the subdivision occurring in a priority area that's been outlined in your OCP for parkland acquisition? And does the OCP set up other locations in town that the town may wish to focus its efforts on when it comes to acquiring new parklands? So in this case, the property is not, as I mentioned, it's not located within one of these priority locations for parkland dedication that's set out under the bylaw, and it's not designated for future parks and trails under the OCP bylaw. So from our perspective, from a staff perspective, we do see a 5% cash in lieu payment as being an appropriate means of meeting that parkland dedication requirement for the subdivision. That being said, I think one of the things that we wanted to flag was that because they've already paid a parkland DCC, which would ordinarily be going towards parkland acquisition and park improvement, council may wish to consider crediting that amount that was previously paid from what would be otherwise owed under that 5% cash in lieu payment. While I don't have the number in front of me, really a summary of the options would be to require that payment be made with that credit, require the cash in lieu payment of the full 5% as stipulated under the Act, or refuse the cash in lieu payment and require the dedication of lands representing that 5% of land being subdivided. So as mentioned, option one, that would be to credit the previously paid parkland dedication. So really, the provincial government has set out various best practices and guidance around how a municipality can avoid double charging for parkland acquisition. So council does have the ability to waive or, again, provide credit for DCCs that have already been paid, and they do recommend avoiding situations where you do end up charging both a DCC and taking land or requiring additional payment for parkland dedication. So in this case, the reduced value, if we're taking the 5% from the fair market appraisal and subtracting the parkland DCC, that would be an amount of $89,380. And again, the other option would be to require a parkland payment of 5%, and that would be equivalent to $142,500. And lastly, council could choose to refuse the proposed cash in lieu payment and require land to be provided instead. However, we did want to flag that aside from not being within a priority area, phase 2 of the Meadowlark development, which is just directly south of the subject property, it did include the provision of the 5% parkland dedication. And I've pointed it out in this slide here, just where it's located. It's not developed at this time, but it would very likely benefit the phase 3 users considering its proximity. Therefore, we don't see future parkland dedication or further parkland dedication in this area to be required. So just in summary, the subject property is not located in a priority area that has been outlined under the town's OCP bylaw for future parkland acquisition and dedication. The applicant has already paid their DCCs that are required as part of this subdivision application, which includes parkland DCCs. The DCC bylaw currently doesn't set out how or if parkland DCCs are to be considered against those parkland dedication requirements under the Local Government Act. However, again, the province does recommend that council avoid double charging for these types of acquisitions. And lastly, the parkland dedication related to phase 2 it was provided in land, which could provide benefits for future users within phase 3. So this is really small, but essentially we're just seeking council's direction at this point with respect to how it would like to proceed with meeting those parkland dedication requirements for this subdivision application. And we are recommending that a reduced parkland dedication cash in lieu be required in this case to reflect the previously paid parkland DCCs. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wong. That was a very comprehensive report. Councillor King.
Yeah, thank you, Member. Just one clarity, Mr. Zackel. If we accept this money put aside for future parks?
This money would go into our parks DCC fund is where this money would go.
Anybody else have any other questions or concerns? Is there someone would like to make? Thank you. The recommended motion. Is there a seconder? Thank you. Councillor Chong, all in favor? Thank you very much. That is good. All right, next is this is Mr. Risling, the bylaw amendment referral from the RDOS.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. The RDOS has recently undergone a review of how they're going to be implementing short-term rentals, and as such, they've determined that they are going to be allowing them with differences in different areas. But regardless, to implement short-term rentals, they're going to have to be making some changes to their OCP, and therefore requesting feedback from the municipality and as far as what you feel about this change. So from an administration perspective, we don't think there's a significant impacts with regards to this, and therefore are simply recommending that the Regional District of Okanagan Similkameen be advised that the town of Sui's interests are unaffected by the proposed amendments to the Regional District of Okanagan Similkameen electoral area A OCP bylaw number 2905/2021.
Thank you very much. Any concerns? No. Is there someone who would like to move the recommendation? Thank you. The recommended motion?
I'll move option 1.
Thank you very much. Is there a seconder? Councillor Poderica. All in favor? Thank you very much, everyone. And next is the zoning bylaw amendment at 3207 Lakeshore Drive. Sorry, what have I missed? Oh, okay, I didn't have a marker in there, that's why. Sorry, we better do this first. General net payroll and Sun Bowl Arena financial accounts. So as of today, general cash requirements of $918,188.08. Sun Bowl cash requirements of $18,122.93 and net payroll accounts of $103,580.43. So could we have a motion, please, to have these for information purposes? Thank you. It's Councillor Bennett, Councillor Chong, all in favor. Thank you. And the other is the building, a summary of building permits. And in the month of February, we have the creation of a secondary suite, a replacement window with a 4-panel door, and creating a secondary suite, and that totals $158,400. Year to date, $513,400, and year to date last year in 2024 was $997,200. So not quite as busy as it has been. Could we have a motion to accept that report, please? Thank you. Councillor King, Councillor Poderica, all in favor. Thank you. So now we'll move on, to the zoning amendment bylaw at 3207 Lakeshore Drive. And I will turn this over to Mr. Garish.
Great, thank you. So through the mayor, I just have a few quick slides to provide some context on the proposed rezoning applications before you today. So just some site context. You can see on the aerial photo here that it's at the north end of the Waltons RV campground park. And the current OCP designation for this park is tourist commercial, which I'll touch on in the next slide. In support of that, the zoning bylaw has applied the campground commercial zone to its CT2 because it is primarily a campground. The parcel is about 1,340 square meters in area. It is within the town's urban containment boundary. And just another comment I wanted to make that the strata lot that you're being asked to consider the rezoning for is number 72. As I understand it, it is a standalone privately held strata parcel within the development. From what we could see from the strata plans related to this parcel, that the only common property appears to be the road network. So with regard to the OCP designation, so as council may be aware, generally the tourist commercial designation supports, I suppose you could argue, the resort designation of the municipality, and seeks to encourage within properties so designated uses and services that cater to the traveling public. So food, entertainment, and obviously accommodation. And the accommodation it supports is a wide range. I haven't included the whole quote from the bylaw here, but motels is certainly one of them. Now, in support of that, the CT2 zone under the zoning bylaw, because this is primarily a campground, the principal use is campground, and the related accessory uses support that use, and currently there is no allowance for motel, hence the rezoning application. He wants to do a motel use, not allowed by the current zoning, asking for a change to allow for that. Which I should say for this next slide, but anyway, you can see here that this is the proposed building to be converted partially to, I believe it's a 5-unit motel use. I've taken an extract of the motel definition here just to give a sense as to what the zoning bylaw considers a motel to be. And then I just wanted to touch on some other aspects for council's consideration. So I can't recall if I've mentioned this before in relation to previous discussions we've had about the zoning bylaw, primarily in relation to small-scale multi-unit housing. But as a municipality that's enacted a zoning bylaw, the legislation requires you to consider every application that's put forward by a property owner. So in this instance, you have a property owner, albeit one of 72 owners within a strata, but he's asking you to consider or reconsider in this instance the zoning that applies to his parcel. And so in bringing these types of applications forward for council's consideration, staff will try to get as much information as we can for you to make an informed decision at first reading. So obviously with the report before you today, you have the benefit of staff's assessment of the proposal. And we'll generally look at that against your adopted bylaws and policies, but we'll also undertake other outreach to the community and agencies. And so Public notification allows anybody who feels they may have an interest in the rezoning to put in representations, and I understand that council has received a lot of representations in relation to this particular proposal. Obviously, you have the application from the property owner, and then also we do agency referrals just to see if there's any organizations, ALC, First Nations, Ministry of Transportation, et cetera, who might have interests that they want council to be aware of. And then when you see this application before you today, as you are for first reading, you can consider all this input when making a decision. And so having said all that, I'll just recap before I close off here what that decision is that's being asked of you. And it's basically to amend, as I said earlier, the CT2 zone, introduce the site-specific allowance. So that'll turn it into a CT2S zone. And that specific site-specific provision would be to list motel as a permitted use in the zone so that this building could be converted to allow for that to occur. And last slide, just closing it off. Again, for council's benefit, and I'm sure this is old hat for you, but depending on how you go with the proposal before you today, if first and second reading is approved, then staff will be looking at scheduling a public hearing at an upcoming meeting, followed by consideration of third reading and adoption. And if the application is denied today, then it's basically closed and that's the end of it. So I'll stop my presentation there. And if there's any questions, I'm happy to try to answer them.
Thank you very much. We certainly have had a lot of letters from people who are owners at the campground. I'm not sure that that would have been considered in just an application rather than waiting for the meeting the public meeting. However, we have them and we've had to look at those as well. So I'm sure council has some questions. Go ahead, Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I feel that due to the new information that's coming forward, that at this time that the town of Osoyoos zoning amendment bylaw number 1395.032025 be denied at this time.
And Councillor Poderica, you're seconding that motion. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak to this before we vote on it?
Yeah,
Go ahead,
I just want to
Councillor
ask
King.
a question. This property, I don't know if you can answer it. Has the strata been paying into this property and maintain the swimming pool, do you know?
Go ahead, Chris.
So through the mayor, I don't have the information to answer that. I mean, from our perspective at a staff level, which I indicated in the first slide, we looked to see if this was considered common property, but
Okay.
from what we can see from the strata plan, the only common property is the road network. We don't know how or what the arrangement is between the owner of this particular property, which appears to contain the amenity block, is with the remainder of the campground, but we see that as an internal issue within the strata to be resolved.
Okay, and then I guess my next question, since the strata owns the road in front of it, how would they propose to even get into their property?
Well, strata lot 72 is part of the strata, so
I mean, the road in front of it. If the strata didn't allow them to go on that road, how would they even get into that?
sorry, I'm just scrolling through to my aerial photo here.
Photo, yeah. I would think so.
Because
Well,
they're part of the strata, they would have to be allowed to go on the strata roads?
Yeah, I'm hesitant to comment on that because that's an internal strata matter, right?
Yeah.
Like if they're, yeah.
Is there anyone else who has, go ahead, Councillor Chong.
It's more so comments. When we first received this case, it was a little baffling. I find this type of application to disrupt otherwise harmony in certain stratas and kind of undermines the organizational structure and processes of how one would properly do an application for rezoning. So, I mean, we're going to be voting soon, so I'll just leave it at that.
Not a problem. And so we have a motion on the floor that motion number 4, that it be denied. And I moved and seconded. I will call a question. All in favor? That is unanimous. So thank you for the report from our planners. Okay, so we will now move on to the 5-year financial plan, a consideration to read a second and a third time. Mr. Zackel.
Thank you, Mayor McCordoff. So bylaw 1401/2025 is before council for consideration of second and third readings. All changes have been made to the budget document as per council's direction from the January 16th meeting. The 2024 carryover projects have been updated and have been included in a 5-year financial plan. Fire department funding between funding partners, the town of Osoyoos, the Osoyoos Rural Fire Protection District, the Osoyoos Indian Band have been updated to reflect the 2025 assessment numbers. We do have one capital project that has been requested to be added to the budget document. And this project is for electronic records management for scanning. And it's basically scanning documents from the Planning and Development Services Department to get them all done electronically. So that budget request is $57,000 coming from reserves. So for everything, this the budget document includes an overall increase to an average single family residence valued at $732,627 for the 2025 tax year. It works out to a $14.07 per month increase. It does not include any taxation changes for other taxing authorities outside of council's control, which includes the regional district, the hospital, school, BC Assessment Authority, Municipal Finance Authority, Sterile and Sick Release, or 911. So at this point in time, I'll pass it back to council for their consideration.
Thank you very much. And just so that we know, we do not have figures for all of the taxing authorities outside of that. We have some of them, but not all of them. Is that correct?
The only one that we've received is the library so far.
Oh, okay.
So the rest of them we usually receive by late April, beginning of May.
And we need to have this budget passed by May the 14th. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. I'll just see if council, any questions? Is there anyone who would like to make a motion? Councillor King? That the 5-year financial plan, number 1401, 2025, be read a second and a third time. Is that correct? Is there a seconder? Thank you. Councillor Bennett, is there any other questions on this? If not, I'll call the question. All in favor? Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Zackel.
Thank you.
Next is the bylaw notification. Have I missed something? No, it's you, Mrs. Robinson.
It
Thank
is.
you.
Thank you,
Sure.
Your Worship. So in front of you is the bylaw, notice bylaw, which has been in the works in the background, getting provincial approval and getting authorization to join the Southern Interior Bylaw Notice Dispute Adjudication Registry, which is throughout the Okanagan. This is just another form of ticketing, and it is a more effective way and cost efficient for the municipality, as we will not be going to court for these kind of tickets when they're issued. They do come with a lower fee that or fine that we can charge, but we do still have the option of the municipal tickets if we feel that we need to use our municipal tickets for that maximum amount of like $1,000. These ones are the max of 500. If somebody does go through the dispute process and they are not successful, there is an additional $25 for recapturing costs. So it is just another form of ticketing for our municipality and to help with another avenue for our bylaw officers so that they don't have to serve tickets in person. This is once the ticket is left on a vehicle or on a door for watering, for example, then that is deemed to have been served. So it is a different avenue and an easier one, more cost effective. So if you have any questions.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Robinson. Councillor King.
Yeah, just a question. I guess when they put a ticket on a door or on a car, does the bylaw take a picture or something to confirm that they left it?
Yes,
Hmm.
our bylaw officers do. They also take photos of the infraction. So they take photos of if the car is parked illegally or if there's watering happening that's not on the right time or date. They do that for proof.
No, that makes sense. Go ahead, Councillor Chung.
We would still go through our kind of normal process of educating first, and then as we have frequent violations, then we'd move just like our normal MTI system as well, right? Or
So yes, our bylaw officers and, for example, our park ambassador are very good at providing education before we issue tickets. There are certain circumstances where we've done that education in the past, and so people do understand that they will be just issued a ticket. For example, the boat trailer parking lot, you know you have to pay for a ticket or pay for parking when you go in there, and you will get ticketed right away.
Okay, any other questions? Could we need to divide this into two?
Into 3, I believe.
Into 3. So
Thank you.
first off is that the bylaw notice 1392, 2025 be read a first, second, and third time.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor King, Councillor Poderica, all in favor? Thank you. Next, that the mayor and corporate officer be authorized to sign the Southern Interior Bylaw Notice Dispute Adjudication Registry Agreement. Councillor Chung, Councillor Bennett, all in favor? Thank you. And third, that the council designates the deputy corporate officer or acting staff member as the town's screening officer and the director of corporate services as the alternate screening officer. Thank you. Councillor Chung, Councillor Poderica, all in favor. Thanks, everybody. Okay, thank you, Mrs. Robinson. And next, we are looking at the Grant Evaluation Committee special meeting that was held on November the 28th. That's just for information. Am I correct on that one?
Yes, Your Worship,
Okay,
you are.
just for information, and the same with the Accessibility and Age-Friendly Committee meeting minutes from January the 16th, 2025. That is for information as well, right?
Yes, Your Mayor. Or Your
Okay,
Worship. Can we have 2 separate motions on those? Thank you.
absolutely. So the first one, that the Grant Evaluation Committee meeting minutes be received for information. Councillor Chong, Councillor Bennett, all in favor. And secondly, that the Accessibility Age-Friendly Committee meeting minutes of January 16th be accepted. Councillor King, Councillor Poderica, all in favor. Thank you. Okay, now we will move on to the CAO report. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Lots of things have gone on the last couple weeks and lots of things going on in the next 2 weeks. First thing, I'm going to just do a reminder for everyone. There was originally a meeting scheduled for the Parks Master Plan for March 13th. That has been canceled and will be scheduled here fairly soon. Other things that are going on, there's an open house, and I know this date has changed several times as well. But the Accessibility and Age-Friendly Committee is scheduling an open house forum for local businesses. And that meeting is scheduled for April 10th. And I know that's changed a couple times, so hopefully this one will stick. This is an opportunity to share information on how to make your businesses more accessible. Volunteer appreciation event is going to be scheduled for May 14th. We have a lot of community members that contribute to the community, and they're going to be welcomed and thanked for their work that they do to make us Canada's warmest welcome. TGIF is scheduled for Friday, March 7th, so it's an event that's free. So all you have to do is schedule or enroll, I believe, before you can attend. So that's a great free event. Farmers Market is being held at Sonora Community Center on March 22nd. And then a bunch of hockey stuff has been going on. The under 11 and under 13 rec playoffs were March 7th and 9th. And our big event, Adam Fiesta, is March 14th to 16th. Under 13 is hosting provincials, March 16th to 19th. And a bit of a congratulations in order to the minor hockey under 18 rep team who are traveling to the provincials in Smithers, BC, March 16th to 21st. Sunbull Skating Club is their year-end show is scheduled for March 13th. And Desert Classic starts March 27th and concludes April 20th. The Indoor Adult Volleyball League is finishing up this week, and as that's winding to a close, the Adult Slow Pitch League registration will be opening up this week. And also those that have marina boat slips, their leases will be mailed out to them here shortly. We're also sending out a lot of, we're getting closer to the end of the water meters, still have a lot of properties to do, but we have a few that haven't gotten back to us. And so really encourage those that maybe are coming back from down south, or they haven't allowed the Neptune in to do the meters to do that. It takes a lot of time and resources administering this on refusals, and ultimately it is going to happen. So just looking for the cooperation of those that maybe don't have them installed yet. Quarterly utility bills are going to be due here at the end of the month. An event that I didn't get to attend, which I wanted to, was Engine 191. It was dedicated to Walter Lemke, who served the community for 35 years. So I'm really disappointed that I missed that. And tonight is short-term rental review project at the Sonora Community Center from 4 to 7. So if you have questions or want to provide feedback, this is a great opportunity to do that. There's also an online session tomorrow from 5:30 to 7 o'clock. On the operational side, starting to turn the seasons. So the guys are out, starting to clean the parks, cleaning the streets. And we were also able to hire one new wastewater operator in Sean Fowley. So that concludes my report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Risling. Could we have a motion, please, to accept the CAO report? Councillor King, Councillor Poderica, all in favor. Thank you. So we'll go on to council reports. Councillor Bennett, you're first.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. February 26th, I did attend a meeting at the fire hall to name a new fire truck after Walter Lemke. After 35 years, congratulations. Then on February 28th, it was interesting. I attended an International Bike Trails online meeting with our friends in Washington State, and they were all at a table and I was online. So when first come online, it was kind of a little not, nobody's really sure what to say because of the Trump era, but we got through and we're all friends and everything is great. And then on March 3rd, I attended another Trails of the Okanagans meeting. And just to finish, St. Patrick's Day is a pretty famous day. And I think we gotta say happy birthday to Zach. That's my report.
Thank you very much. Councillor Chong, you're next.
Unfortunately, I missed the local physicians recruitment meeting due to unforeseen circumstances, but had additional meetings with other stakeholders in support of some of the initiatives that we are undergoing with that committee. And then we had our well, I guess our second, but our planning meeting for Sears Beach Volleyball League. So that is going to happen. So we're just, me and three of our directors are working very hard to get the timeline smoothened and have everything done so that it'll be a seamless transition. Yeah, happy birthday, Councillor Poderica, in I guess a few days, but still, yeah. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Can I just ask, when does beach volleyball officially start? Or because does town staff have to do some prep work down at Gyro?
We
first?
still have to submit the application for the Wednesday night, but it has been tentatively penciled off. I'm looking at Director Davis, obviously. And then we're procuring all the necessary equipment, mostly from Canadian sources for obvious reasons. But usually it'll start the first Wednesday of June. Yeah. And then our end of year tournament will be August 23rd.
Okay, thank you very much. And Councillor Poderica, you're next.
Thank you, Your Worship. On February 26th, I also was able to attend the fire truck dedication for former retired fire chief Walter Lemke, who did serve his community for a good number of years. I know talking to him afterwards, he really enjoyed, obviously the sophistication in emergency equipment over the last couple of years. He enjoyed his ride around town that night, and it was a great turnout. It was great to see the family there as well in his honor. So that's my report. Thank you.
And I believe you said you ran into somebody who was very appreciative of having Walter as the fire chief. Was that somebody that you mentioned? Maybe I'm mistaken. It's something else.
The family was very appreciative of
Yes.
The event and being there for the events.
Yes. And I'm just going to say that I mentioned to Walter, because I was there as well, that when he was the fire chief and I was the chair of Cherry Fiesta, I could go in with my form to where Walter worked, and he had coffee every day. Dawn had to make all the coffee for all of the people that used to come in and sit there for half an hour. And I would say, Chief, I need you to sign this form so we can put on Cherry Fiesta. And he'd sign it and we were done. Now it's many, many, many pages, rightly so, but that was the way it used to be. And I reminded Walter of that, and he said, yeah, I don't know why I let all those people in for coffee. Anyway, that was fun. So, sorry, we've missed somebody. Councillor King.
It's really just saying ditto to what two other councils said. I did attend the fire hall for the dedication. It was great to see, and it really kind of interesting to see the plaque on the back of a fire machine was great. But I think the comment was kind of interesting. He was asked possibly if he could get the old original fire truck started, because he's one of the only mechanics in town that would have any idea how to start it. And when you do start it, how you get it to stop is another whole question. The mayor might embellish on that, but it would be exciting to see that fire truck in the parade. The fire truck's over 50 years old.
Thank you, Councillor King. And I did mention that to the Chief Lemke, and also our assistant chiefs are going to look at that as well. It would be wonderful for the 75th anniversary Cherry Fiesta Parade to have that old fire truck included with the other ones in the parade. So thank you. Okay, so a couple of things that I have done over the last couple of weeks. I attended the Okanagan Basin Water Board meeting. We're also in the process. I mentioned that James Litley is the new Chief Operating Officer, but we are also doing interviews for a new Executive Director. Anna Warwick-Sears is the director at the moment, but we're in the process of hiring a new one. So perhaps by the next meeting, I will know what that is. Regional District, been at one of those meetings last week because I go every 2 weeks, and the budget was passed. I think our budget, I can't remember, is 300 pages or something. The RDOS one, because they have 176 different budgets, is about 1,000 pages. So that was passed, and they have a Gantt chart. Well, I'm not even sure what Gantt stands for, but what they do is look at everybody's all of the people that work there at the RDOS and what their jobs are and what they need to do. And it's basically they do what the committees do what the priorities have been set out by the board of directors. So it's quite confusing, but it's very well managed up there. So I was yesterday, I was on the Osoyoos, the International Osoyoos Lake Board of Control. And we had quite a long meeting. One of the things that I found most interesting was that Northwest Hydraulic Consultants, NHC, had been, gave a report on a multi-phase project, the vulnerability of Vesuvius Lake to a projected shift in climate. And because Vesuvius Lake is at the bottom of the chain in the Okanagan, plus we get the influence of the Similkameen River below the Zozal Dam, Vesuvius Lake is prone to having information and water come down from the north and from the west, and so we're in a kind of an interesting position, always have been. One of the things that climate change they're looking at in the report was that the freshet is a little earlier than it used to be, and the freshet just refers to the time when, usually in the spring, when the snow melts up in the hills and comes down, and it depends on the length of time that it takes for it to actually melt and get into the Okanagan Lake and Okanagan River and then down into Vesuvius Lake. It's earlier and earlier, and we can see that continuing. And interesting that we were looking at 2017 because it was an early freshet, and so Okanagan Lake was, the level was raised in order to accommodate later in the season. And then in May, we had amazing rainstorms, and that threw everything off balance, and we ended up with a flood down here. So one of the things that is being done is to look at the Okanagan Lake regulations review for that system, and it hasn't been done for quite a while. It's being sanctioned by the province and being dealt with by a lot of experts, and certainly OBWB is involved with that. And also, they were forecasting not only an earlier freshet, but more drought conditions, because there seems to be, as we heard, less water up in the hills, and therefore we will see drought conditions more often as well. So there at the bottom of the page on this report, it said, and I wrote it down, this IJC that looks after this, more than a century of cooperation protecting shared waters. And of course, we still continue to do that. It's very important to do that. The other thing that I've been involved with, sometimes daily, sometimes once a week, is the Border Mayors Alliance. So I do try and keep council and the RDOS, who has supported me as being the information person to get changes and updates. I send them, try to do a weekly update on some of the major things. That's sometimes difficult because things can change hourly, not weekly. So that's tricky. So I get things from updates on things several times a day. Excuse me. There are more mayors joining the alliance. Therefore, at the last meeting, when we agreed to pay the city of Windsor $290 for our share, it's now going down, and it's less because there are more people to share this. The city of Windsor will send out a notification and send something to the town, so that won't be paid until then. The border, the other day I went down to the border on Saturday, and just to talk to them. I didn't want them to give me any information that they couldn't, of course not. But I just wanted to say that we were concerned about this. There were very few cars going down across the border and very few coming back, and the duty-free business was not open. So I think people are being a little bit careful about whether they're going down or back. What I recommend, and I'm sure everybody does, is that we support local businesses. Definitely, we want to our local businesses who can provide services and goods and so on to be supported. I've always said that since I've been the mayor, so that's no different. But we also need to welcome Americans who decide that they want to come up to Canada and use their enhanced dollar, it's worth a lot more, to come up here. I know that some of them have been shopping up here. Some of them have come to visit. We need to welcome them, and as a tourist municipality, we are happy to have them show up and support our economy. So this afternoon, I was on a webinar with Minister Callon, Minister Anderson, Minister of State, and Premier Eby, and they were talking about tariffs. And there were 117 people on this call, so there was a lot. Team Canada approach, and their concern is, Premier Eby said, concerned about commercial traveling through Highway 97, and some of the northern communities then mentioned on this call that they appreciate having the tourists go through the Alaska, the Alaska highway, because it was built by Canadians and Americans at one time. And they're hoping to promote tourism and hope that people will come through, although there is the possibility of having a tariff. Also, they were concerned about procurement of fire trucks and building materials and that type of thing, which could have tariffs on them. And so it was suggested that we try and work together and have a procurement policy which might make it easier for all communities to get what they need, because as we know, a lot of our things come from the States and from other countries, and so it's going to be a bit of a confusing issue for some time. Anyway, I will continue to report on these things. Whenever I get it, but I could be doing this on an hourly basis sometimes. I just wanted to note that on Sunday, the Black Hawk helicopter from the RCMP was out checking the borders, and some people, that is a concern. I say no, that is not a concern, that's a good thing. They're actually doing a great job and helping to protect us, and the RCMP are very involved with that. So the only other thing I can say is that Friday night, the 14th, spring break starts this weekend, and that signals the 51st anniversary Atom Fiesta. So there is an opening ceremony. There's 16 teams coming from all over the province. I didn't check all of the names, but we have one from Quesnel, I think. They've been here every year for 50 years, and I'm assuming they're here. Are they, Mr. Davis? Yeah, they always come. That's pretty amazing. So I will attend that. I will also attend the opening ceremonies of the under 13 Tier 4 provincial hockey tournament. That would be on the 17th at night. So 2 big hockey tournaments on here this weekend. There will be lots of people in town. Lots of people supporting our businesses. So make sure that you say hello to them and welcome them. So that is my report for today, and I will move into the in-camera section that pursuant to section 91 of the community charter or part of the council meeting may be closed to the public if the subject matter being considered relates to one or more of the following. 91A, personal information about an identifiable individual who holds or is being considered for a position as an officer, employee, or agent of the municipality, or another position appointed by the municipality. And 91E, acquisition, disposition, or expropriation of land or improvements, if the council considers that disclosure could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality. Could I have a mover? Councillor